In round 14, Longmire would kick a club record 14 in the second encounter with poor old Richmond. But come the round 22 clash with Collingwood, he needed 4 goals for his 100. He could only manage 2. The chance of a lifetime slipping away with his wayward right foot. The AFL Tribunal played host to some of its most regular customers. David Rhys-Jones made his 25th appearance after striking Fitzroy's Darren Kapler. Tony Francis would get 6 weeks for kicking Murray Rance. And perennial favourite Dermot Brereton made a 13th trip. It was to be an unlucky 13th as well, as he copped 4 weeks for striking Melbourne's Gary Lyon. When Dermy returned, he produced the bravest performance of 1990. With 2 broken ribs, protected by an inflatable vest, he kicked 11 goals against Richmond and felt every one of them. It was a year to be remembered for the Heartstoppers. In round 5, the AFL moved the St Kilda Collingwood match from Moorabbin to the MCG. 67,000 saw the Magpies win by a point. For Hawthorn, looking for its 3rd premiership in a row, the omens were looking good. With a 2-point win over Collingwood in round 7 at Waverley, the Hawks were again strong contenders. There had been 2 standout teams in 1990, Essendon and Collingwood. The Bombers under Kevin Sheedy, the Magpies under his old foe Lee Matthews. When scheduled to play at Windy Hill in round 19, the AFL intervened. Not only would the game be played at Waverley on a Sunday, but it would be televised live into Melbourne. In one of the best last quarters of the season, and with 65,000 looking on, Collingwood came back from a 28-point deficit, but failed by 6 points. By round 22, the oldest and longest-serving Hawk of all was continuing on his record-breaking way. Against Melbourne, he played his 404th AFL game, topping the record of 403 set by Richmond's Kevin Bartlett in 1983. And there was still a bit left in Tucky's tank. A week later, he would play his 36th final, but the Hawks' dream of an 8th successive grand final evaporated as Melbourne shut down their forward line and eliminated them by 9 points. After 221 games and 3 flags, it was the end for coach Alan Jeans. At Waverley, things were a little tighter, despite the heroics of Peter Dacos, who kicked the goal of the season.
Brown right on the boundary line. Back to Mullane, likewise. Dacos nearly runs out of room. He's goal! Magnificent goal!
Collingwood and the West Coast were deadlocked. This was an arm wrestle that went down to the wire. Peter Sumich had the chance to win the game for the Eagles.
Peter Sumich. Missed. It's a tie.
It'll be a draw.
It is a tie. There's the siren.
It's a draw.
The 6th final draw in league history saw a replay a week later. The Magpies won easily. We mourned the loss of Collingwood champion and league administrator Jack Hamilton, who was killed in a car accident. We cried with Tony Liberatore as the pugnacious little bulldog added a Brownlow medal to his growing trophy cabinet. And we felt for Alex Jesaulenko as he was sacked at Carlton to be replaced by David Parkin. Twice in 3 weeks, Collingwood would face Essendon. The pressures on Matthews' Magpies intense. In the second semi-final, they would restrict the Bombers to 7 goals. On grand final day to 5.
Plenty of attention is Kelly.
And we thought this had happened very early on, and now they're not mucking around these guys. And usually this does happen early on in a grand final, not at the quarter-time break.
Kick it forward.
And there's a fella you can see there, a Collingwood player down. It looks like it's Christian.
For the first time since 1958, Collingwood had won the AFL Premiership. The collywobbles that had made them the butt of every footballing joke had finally been laid to rest.
A lot of people say you must be totally excited after the game, but I can tell you I've been in 2 losing ones, so the idea was that, I was just totally relieved that we weren't losers again, To win the Norm Smith, well, that was an added bonus. I wasn't worried about that. I just wanted to hold the cup up, so, that was the most important part of it.
Has to be the composition of the competition, I think. The fact that in this decade, Port Adelaide, Fremantle have come into the competition So that's been amazing. And the fact that, in fact, 4 of the premierships of the 90s have been won by teams outside Melbourne, you wouldn't have thought of that would happen in the early 80s.
In an era of change, this was to be a year that saw Adelaide enter the competition and strike fear into the hearts of the football homeland with a round 1 victory over Hawthorn.
This is Maynard from 50. He's kicked another one. Oh, they're hot.
No Hawk was more agitated than Dermot Brereton. He whacked Chris McDermott and was suspended for 5 matches and later fined $2,000.
That was terrible stuff there by the 2 Hawthorn players, and McDermott has not moved.
A galaxy of rising new stars brightened the game. There was the instant impact of Gavin Wanganeen at Essendon, and 2 sets of brothers, the Jarmans, Andrew in Adelaide and Darren with Hawthorn.
Well, spins out of trouble, clever, right foot snap, and he puts it through.
There was Glenn Jakovich with the Eagles and the flamboyant Allen at Melbourne. All would be instant crowd pleasers. It would be a topsy-turvy year, to say the least. Melbourne kicked 2 goals in round 1, then a barrage of 27 in round 2. Darren Bennett kicked 8 of them.
And the drop punt. Bennett's got his 3rd.
And before the decade was out, his right foot would take him to new heights in the American NFL. Collingwood was still savouring the joy that a premiership brings, and prior to the game against Fitzroy, unfurled its 14th premiership pennant at Victoria Park. While the Magpie Army celebrated, next-door neighbours Fitzroy were battling to survive. Their plight had become a public campaign. When Adelaide made their Melbourne debut in round 4 at Windy Hill, they sensed the mood. That wily old fox, Kevin Sheedy, wasn't even prepared to concede which way the wind was blowing. He then blew them away. Under Malcolm Blight, Geelong was proving to be a revelation. With superstar Gary Ablett announcing his retirement, the Cats had a great start to the season, helped by performances like this from Billy Brownless.
What did he do this time? Kick a goal, number 8.
For the first time, AFL matches would be played in Hobart. Fitzroy at home to Hawthorn. And with Allen and Jarman running amok and a scoreboard ticking over to 36-15-231, the poor old Lions wished they were somewhere else. There were ups, none more spectacular than Warwick Kappa.
Full forward, Kappa climbs and marks spectacularly.
And there were downs. Like this day, when Sydney watched a 36-point halftime lead turn into a 54-point loss to North. The same familiar faces were kicking the goals. Jason Dunstall with 9 in a losing side at Waverley. And then in round 7, Tony Lockett reappeared after a severe back injury. In his first game for the season, he kicked 12 goals at Moorabbin against Adelaide. Within 3 weeks, Lockett was the talk of the football world. With his broken vertebrae nicely healed, he kicked another 10 against Brisbane. And then a week later, made it 34 in 3 games with another dozen against Sydney. After 9 successive losses and a dwindling bank balance, Fitzroy made the breakthrough against Geelong. A youngster named Brett Allison would soar at the MCG and take one of the grabs of the year. And Carlton would not score a goal until the final quarter of its game against the Bulldogs. And for trivia buffs, it was kicked by Mark Arsieri. On the Queen's birthday Monday, the media arrived in droves for the start of the reserve grade game at Princess Park. Gary Ablett back from retirement after 11 rounds. He'd play in the seconds.
Yeah. So hope to be fit enough to play in the seniors pretty soon?
Oh, well, I'll just see what happens. I'll go today and have a game and just get my fitness up and see what happens from there.
While all the drama was unfolding, the West Coast Eagles under Michael Malthouse just kept winning. Against Footscray at the Wacker on a Friday night in June, they won their 13th successive game. Peter Sumich helping their cause with 13 goals. A week later, the streak would come to an end, a 3-point loss to Carlton. St Kilda, with plugger Lockett back, had been quietly advancing up the ladder. When they travelled to Subiaco for the game against the Eagles, it was a lockout. 42,000 saw Lockett kick 8 in a losing side.
Straight through the middle.
There were odd moments in 1991. Peter Foster had every reason to feel grateful for the goal umpire when he got this dubious goal against Essendon.
A little bit to the left.
Coleman's coming off the ground. He's going down to talk to the goal umpire and thank him.
And Todd Viney saw nothing to smile about when he was bitten on the finger by Eagle Chris Lewis.